Hey everyone, welcome to the RotoGrinders Morning Grind podcast. I'm your host, Stevietpfl. It's Tuesday. It's December 26th. It is 2023. We have 9 NBA games to talk about here on today's podcast, joined today by my good buddy Timothy Buell, TastefulTides. Tim, we're actually live early Tuesday morning. It's very rare that we're actually recording on the same day that we're talking about, but what's happening, my friend?
Yeah, not much. Yeah, it sounded like we both had some busy Christmases and some good ones, and I hope everybody else did too, and had a great holiday for everybody. And yeah, it's a pretty awesome 9-game slate. I watched a lot of football yesterday. I had a pretty good showdown last night with the 49ers Ravens. I had a pretty good slate, but I didn't win on the 3-gamer.
Yeah, I didn't do any football yesterday. I was shocked. Like, just didn't have time to build teams.
Yeah.
I did some NBA stuff. Christmas NBA is always one of my favorite slates, and got a lot right, and just completely whiffed on the Phoenix side of the slate. So it went from being like a really solid slate to barely scraping by a slate. So I was happy, but yeah.
Yeah, I would have done well in NBA except for the Caleb Martin injury. That got me.
Yeah, I didn't have any Caleb Martin. I had a ton of Bam. I had a ton of Melton, and I had, oh gosh, I can't even think of who else I had right now. But I had gotten 3.5 games right. Like I was on my way. And then just the Philly side, I ended up not playing a ton of Paul Reed, so he didn't hurt me.
Yep.
So that worked out, but. Yeah, it was just. I mean, overall, like I said, it was going to be a good slate, and just kind of whiffed on Phoenix. So Luka did Luka things, and my best team had Jokic over Luka, but I was high on Podsy. That was the other person I was high on. He had a really strong game. He was a rebound away from 45 plus fantasy points. So
yeah.
All right, but that's over. We move on to a 9-game slate. It's 7 games on FanDuel. Tim was telling me before the podcast, they ditched the late games, and we have a nice little 9-game slate on DraftKings. So we're going to talk about all 9 games, and we get started here. Orlando at Washington, 238 total. Orlando's a 7.5-point favorite. Fultz is out. Ingles and Suggs is questionable. Washington's good to go. I mean, Fultz being out matters. If Suggs sits, that matters a lot.
Yep.
Because then now we're talking, the rotation getting a little bit smaller. The toughest thing with the Magic right now is their rotation seems to be so large. Let's start here with the Magic. Phenomenal matchup. This is the type of matchup that we absolutely love. Washington plays at one of the fastest pace in the NBA. And they play. I mean, they play at the fastest pace in the NBA. They have their last in rebounding and their last in defensive rating. What do we like here for the Orlando Magic?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it depends on Suggs, right? Like if Suggs is out, then I'm definitely going to get to Cole Anthony. I don't care if he's coming off the bench or not. This is a fantastic matchup for him. He's only 6,700. Paulo Banchero at 8,300. I think he has an amazing floor in this matchup. He certainly has a ceiling as well. It's definitely. I'm waiting on the day. I want to be early on Wendell Carter, right? Like you want to be early when he finally gets his minutes extended. And if it happens to be in this matchup, you're going to be in an amazing spot because not only are the Wizards the worst team defensively, they're also the worst rebounding team. So this is an amazing spot for Wendell Carter Jr. I don't know if I can get to him in a 3-max setting, but if I was building out more than say 10 or so lineups, I would definitely get to a couple Wendell Carter teams just because you want to be early when they finally extend his minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when that's going to happen. I think that they're very content easing him back in. And I mean, honestly, they've lost, 2 to 3 games since he's come back. So I'm with you though. If he does get that 28 minutes, 29 minutes, this is a phenomenal spot at this price for him.
This is the spot. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I don't mind Franz Wagner in this spot. This is a spot I think he has a pretty good upside spot. I agree with you on Paulo. I think his floor is really high. Love Cole Anthony if Suggs sits. He'll probably end up being like my highest owned player on the slate if Suggs ends up sitting here. So with Fultz already out, it would be a smash spot for Cole Anthony. And like it's a wrist injury for Suggs, and it's a sprain, and he's missed some time already. So it wouldn't shock me if he sits here. Cole Anthony's played 24 and 33 minutes in the 2 games that Suggs has sat. So or Washington side of this game. I mean, Washington's a tough team. Jordan Poole has a high usage rate right now, but all he's doing is scoring. We've seen a little bit of upside from Tyus Jones, but his price is 6,900. Kuzma has upside, but I think at the end of the day, we got to remember that the Orlando Magic's a tough defensive matchup. They're one of the best defensive teams in the league. They're 5th right now in defensive rating. They're getting Wendell Carter Jr. back, which is a good defender. Anything that you like here on the Washington side of this game?
Yeah, like guys like Kuzma and Poole and even Jones to me are too expensive for this matchup. I really question that they have much of a ceiling at their price tags. This entire team would be an X out for me, to be honest with you. This is a good spot to fade Washington, in my opinion.
Yeah, if Gafford was a little bit cheaper, he would probably be my favorite play from Washington. Because he's someone that he can rack up the blocks. Like he's someone that can get 3 to 6 blocks in a game. So I think if Gafford, he's like the one guy that like if I end up in that range and I'm okay with like him being at that position type of thing. But I think Kuzma is just someone that's really tough to get to right now at 8,400. He's had some games where he's flashed some 50-point upside, but I mean, that's Portland. It's not Orlando. So the one thing that does stand out to me here is like this game is being played in Washington. So Washington is going to try to push the pace a little bit more than like this game being played in Orlando. But I mean, like Jordan Poole's 7,600. And even when he scored 30 points recently, he hasn't had big games. So I'm just worried about like his overall ceiling. All right, we got Brooklyn at Detroit, another great spot to go to. 232 total. Brooklyn, a 6.5 point favorite. Simons and Walker remain out. Morris remains out for Detroit. Looking at this spot on the Brooklyn side, again, fast-paced Detroit team. They're 7th in pace. They're 26th in defensive rating. They're allowing a ton of fantasy points per game. What do we like here for Brooklyn?
Yeah, well, obviously, somebody like Nick Claxton really stands out at 6,700. I think this is an absolutely amazing spot for him. He is going to be highly owned, though, so you got to be careful and pay attention to like the rest of your lineup if you play Claxton, because I think he is going to be the chalkiest center on the slate. But he's in a fantastic matchup. He's only $6,700. He should absolutely crush this Detroit team. My favorite tournament like large field would be Mikal Bridges at 7,400, small forward, power forward. He has a massive ceiling in this matchup. Definitely, this is definitely not a team that we need to shy away from. We need to be attacking this Detroit team. I think Spencer Dinwiddie's okay, but he would definitely rank 3rd for me behind Claxton and Bridges. Cam Johnson's okay, I guess. He'd be more of like, I don't know, part of like a game stack. I wouldn't be like actively seeking him out. But definitely Claxton is my favorite play.
What's good for us on Claxton? I'm with you on Claxton, by the way. I have a ton of interest in him, and like he just busted in this spot the other night against Detroit. So I like the idea of going back to the well here. Bridges had a monster game the other night. Dinwiddie had a monster first quarter the other night. So I think this is a great spot for Bridges, and I think this is a great spot for Claxton. I think if you want to get different and, take some shots on Dinwiddie, I don't hate that. I think those 3 guys are going to have quite a bit of ownership on this slate, and I'm with you on Claxton. I hope that I know like our projected ownership for like the morning run is up, and it's like 39%, and he's going to be kind of chalky here. But I hope that people like are game log watching and looking, oh, he just played Detroit. He failed. Well, I'll take my chances against Detroit. So I'm with you on Claxton. Ton of interest in him. The Detroit side of things, I mean, when I can fit Cade, I play him. I mean, he's someone that I take point props on all the time because, like, this guy, his usage rate is through the roof. He's getting up a ton of shots, and he has the ball in his hands all the time. It's just really hard to fit him in DFS wise because of his $8,300 price tag. I don't necessarily hate him in this spot. It's just, I mean, Duren is expected to play in this game. He's probable. So like that's going to hurt some of the minutes that we've seen here. And then like Hayes, who missed the game the other night, or like I think he's missed like 2 or 3 games in a row. He's expected to play in this game. So talk to me here about Detroit.
Yeah, so I think this would be Duren's first game back since the 6th. Pretty sure.
Yeah, he's been out.
So I can't imagine he's going to get a full allotment of minutes. I think Cade, just in my opinion, is a little bit too expensive. Like he is definitely a good point prop guy, though. I'll give you that. But yeah, I think for DFS purposes, I think he's a little bit pricey. I do have a little bit of interest in Bojan just because I feel like he can just have these like monster games and nobody ever wants to click him at 6,500. So and he plays really, really big minutes. So I think Bojan would be my favorite. I think you got to stay away from like the Ivy Hayes situation unless one of them sits, obviously. And then Asar Thompson, I guess, 5,400. I just really like his game. And I think he's pretty cheap and he's still getting decent minutes. So I think he would be okay for tournaments.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bogdanovich is always someone you could take some shots on. I think he's more of like a cash game play, though. He's not like a high ceiling tournament play. And I mean, outside of that, just nothing I really love. I like the Thompson call, but again, he just hasn't shown any upside recently. So you worry a little bit about that. But overall, for me on Detroit, it's like maybe taking some player prop stuff on Cade, and then just kind of writing off the rest of this team. Utah at San Antonio, 241.5 total in this game. Utah's a 3.5 point favorite. George and Horton Tucker are questionable on the Utah side, and then on the San Antonio side, Bassey's out. Wimby is questionable. This game has a lot of upside just overall because both of these teams are just awful defensively. I mean, like. And like Utah is awful defensively, and they're playing extremely fast. They're allowing a ton of threes, like just a good spot overall. But let's start here with the Utah side. I mean, Horton Tucker being questionable is huge here. He has saw a minutes bump recently where like he's been playing 30 minutes a night. George, I mean, when he's been healthy, he's been playing really solid minutes. So good to see Markkanen and Clarkson back here. What do you like for Utah in this spot?
Yeah, this is probably my favorite game on the entire slate. How I want to go about playing it, I'm not 100% sure yet. But yeah, definitely, I love Lauri Markkanen in this spot. I love Clarkson in the spot. The THT news is huge. George is he's still questionable, right? I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's big news too. So paying attention to that Horton Tucker and Keontae George news is very, very important. But yeah, like I definitely am going to want to get to multiple pieces of this game. How exactly that falls, I'm not quite sure yet. But like if Horton Tucker and George were to miss, then like fire up Jordan Clarkson. Definitely. He would be like an amazing play. Even I think Colin Sexton, if those two were to miss, would be fine at 7,000. The interesting thing is like how they split up the Kessler Olynyk minutes. They seem to be like splitting those minutes. So I don't really have too much interest in Kessler and Olynyk, even though I think it's a really good spot for them.
Yeah, Olynyk the other night got in foul trouble. So I don't know like how much we want to look into. He was absolutely crushing. He had a really good first half. Yeah. His third quarter was really good, and he got in foul trouble in that third quarter. He had 4 fouls and never checked back in. Kessler was playing really good in that game, and like Kessler just, ended up playing a ton of minutes. So 2 quick fouls in the fourth quarter cost Olynyk probably 8 to 12 minutes in that game. So I don't know how much I want to look into Olynyk and Kessler. I don't know how much I'm going to need to on this slate either.
Right.
I love Markkanen in this spot. I think this is a high upside spot for Markkanen. I don't mind Clarkson. I just think that right now Markkanen has a higher ceiling than Clarkson. So really like Markkanen here. If George ends up sitting and Horton Tucker ends up sitting, we've seen Chris Dunn play 33 and 34 minutes the last 2 games. So really like Chris Dunn if those 2 guys are out. But I think I want both of those guys to be out for me to get to Chris Dunn. So
definitely
watching some injury news here. Fontecchio's minutes have kind of disappeared with Markkanen and Clarkson coming back. So I really think your focus here is Markkanen and Clarkson. And then if those guys get ruled out, it's hard not to have some interest here in Chris Dunn.
And we'll talk about it in a second. But like if Wemby were to miss this game, that would just catapult Markkanen. Really, in my opinion, that would make Markkanen an even better play.
All right, let's talk about that San Antonio side. They have no reason to push Wemby here. He's dealing with they didn't necessarily say it's a sprained ankle. He stepped on somebody's foot the other night.
A ball boy.
Yeah.
I feel so bad for that kid.
Oh, I know. And he ended up missing Saturday's game. If Wemby sits here, obviously a ton of interest in Zach Collins. But Zach Collins isn't necessarily like a free play anymore. Like his price is kind of caught up. I would have a ton of interest in Sohan at 6K. Utah is a great matchup. Vassell, Johnson, these guys are very much in play. We've seen mixed results from both of these guys with Wemby off the floor this season. So I really think Sohan would be like my main target here. I'd have some interest in Collins. But yeah, we're definitely paying attention to this Wemby news because again, this game has a 241.5 total, which is the highest total on the slate. It's 2 teams that don't play defense, and it's going to be a game where the pace is going to be pushed. So gotta like San Antonio here.
And it's a 3.5 point spread, so it's high and tight. Like this is exactly what we want for DFS purposes. My favorite play would be Zach Collins. The only problem is Nick Claxton is basically that exact same price at the exact same position. So can you play both of them? Absolutely, but you might have to just pick one of them. And I think in a vacuum, I prefer Claxton. I love Vassell in this matchup. Sohan would be a fantastic play. Big body Keldon Johnson at 7,200. All these primary San Antonio pieces would be great in tournaments. I think this is a game where you could conceivably play like a 2-2, right? Like get two on each side. Because this is going to be. There are some games on this slate that are like really not great for fantasy purposes, and this is the best game. So leaning heavily into this game, I think is a very, very strong strategy for tournaments. And if Wemby were to play, I would absolutely love to play him at 9K because if he does play, he's pretty much 100% healthy. So at 9,000, that's an absolute bargain.
Yeah, so he sat, what was it, like the 19th or whenever they had the game right before the Chicago game, they sat Wemby the 19th against Milwaukee. And he came back in that game on the 21st and only played like 22 minutes. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Wemby right now. Like I overall, like if I knew Wemby was going to play 30 plus minutes in this game, I think he'd be one of the highest ceiling players on the slate. But so I do not trust Pop at all.
So you're concerned that even if he starts, you're concerned that he doesn't get to 30 minutes.
Well, I'm just saying, like, he's been dealing with this ankle, right? Like soreness, and now like he stepped on a foot and he twisted his ankle, and that now it's worse. Okay, so like San Antonio has no reason to push this guy right now. Like this is a future superstar in the NBA. Right. And they have no reason to push this guy right now. So, like, I'm a little concerned about his minutes. And, like, again, Tim, I agree with you. Like, if we knew Wemby was playing 30 minutes in this spot, he'd be one of the top plays on the slate. I just don't trust his minutes here. And like, gosh, if he doesn't get that like 55 plus, I mean, like he's not going to kill me at 9K. Like he can put up 48, and I'm not like overly concerned that he put up 48.
Right.
So I'm on the fence if Wemby plays. If Wemby plays, it really does hurt the value of like Zach Collins and some of these other players. I don't think Sohan matters as much, but I think Sohan has a higher upside if Wemby sits. All right, we got Minnesota at OKC taking on the Thunder. 227.5 total here. Thunder a 2.5 point favorite. A lot of injury news in this game that we're watching here. Karl Anthony Towns is dealing with like a knee injury, and he's questionable. And then on the Thunder side, Giddey and Jalen Williams is questionable here. So a lot of meaningful minutes potentially going to be missed here. On the Minnesota side, if Cat sits in this game, it's huge. Like he's not his usage is way down when it comes to like where we were at 3 or 4 years ago. Anthony or Edwards has kind of made a huge difference in like Cat's role, just overall. What are our thoughts here with Cat in, with Cat out on the Minnesota side?
Well, if Cat plays, I don't really have a whole lot of interest. This game is going to be played against the Thunder, who have the 6th best defensive rating in all of basketball. Minnesota has the best defensive rating in all of basketball. So if everybody's healthy, this game is kind of like kind of a pass for me. But if if Towns were to miss, I don't know if I want to pay $7,900 for Rudy Gobert. To be completely honest with you, like I know that he can absolutely dominate Chet, but I don't know. Like it's not exactly like a lock. Like he's not like sometimes you can get Rudy Gobert at like the high 6s or low 7s, but now he's close to 8K. So like I question that he has like a real slate breaking ceiling, even with no Towns. Naz Reid is priced up to 6,400, which is really good pricing by DK, but it's like not exactly like a free square. So I don't know really how much interest I have in this game, whether Towns plays or not.
Yeah, so if Karl Anthony Towns plays, I don't have a ton of interest in this game overall. If Towns sits, I don't think I want to go to Gobert or Naz Reid. I think the player I'd look to is maybe like a Kyle Anderson here. He gets a nice little usage bump with Towns off the floor, but like he's kind of priced like Towns is out. Like they bumped his price on DraftKings to 5,500. So it's like, do I even really look at him? The other person that gets a nice little bump with Towns off the floor is Mike Conley, but Mike Conley has actually had some good games here recently, so his price has gone up. So I don't know, Towns being in or out really matters to me in this game because all these guys are priced appropriately. Like Anthony Edwards with Towns off the floor this season is averaging 1.39 fantasy points per minute. That puts him really close to playable here at 9,600 if he were going to play 38 minutes. And he does. He plays a ton of minutes. He's going to get up a ton of shots in this game. So I think Anthony Edwards is someone you could look at depending on the Cat news on the high end. But I think all the low end pieces, they kind of priced up and have made it really tough. I do want to mention that Jaden McDaniels has been playing really big minutes recently. Minnesota has really like tightened up their rotation. So just continue to watch this Jaden McDaniels stuff. Another guy that got a huge price increase. I don't have FanDuel or Yahoo up in front of me, but just wanted to note that. On the Thunder side, I mean, it's SGA and Holmgren, and like that's really it for me. I don't care like who's in, who's out. Like this team is just, it's really tough for me. I will say, like, if Williams ends up missing the game, he's a guy that plays like 28 to 35 minutes a night. Josh Giddey's role has kind of disappeared in this offense just in general. If we did get news that like Williams is going to end up sitting, I think that's when you can like go to like Dort or like Wallace or some of these cheap guys and try to find some value on the Thunder.
Yeah, and the other thing I just wanted to point out about SGA, like, yeah, this is a really bad matchup. but he, in early ownership projections, he is 1% owned. So
Yeah.
I think that's pretty incredible, for a player with such a high ceiling. So I know this isn't a great spot, but he still projects really well. He's projecting for 53 DK points as a median projection at 1% ownership. So, and that's with guys like Williams and Gideon. So, I just, I think he's interesting for tournaments. I always like to play SGA. Am I going to play him in a 3-max setting? Probably not. But in an MME setting, I think getting like 3, 4, 5% of him would be a fantastic GPP play.
All right, Atlanta at Chicago, 232.5 total here. Chicago 1-point favorite. Hunter is out for Atlanta, and then Johnson is upgraded to questionable here, and Trae Young is questionable. On the Chicago side, Craig and Levine remain out, but Vooch was on the injury report this morning as questionable. He's dealing with a little bit of an injury, so Vooch hasn't missed a game, I think, in the last 2 years. So he might end up playing through this, but if he doesn't, it's probably actually a big injury because this guy doesn't come off the floor. And the only reason I know that is because I draft Vooch a lot in best ball NBA. On the Atlanta side, this is a game you have to have circled because Trae Young potentially sitting is huge. Hunter already ruled out is good for the Wings. Johnson being questionable with the wrist injury. If he does play, he hasn't played since the 25th of November. What are your thoughts here on the Atlanta side?
Yeah, definitely monitoring that Young news because Murray would become basically at least
a plug and
cash
play.
game lock. Yeah, at the very least, you're playing him 100% in cash games. You're probably playing him 100% in a 3-max. 7,800 would be way too cheap for Murray if Young were to sit. Okongwu, I think, is interesting at 5,900, especially now that he has power forward eligibility. 5,900, I think, is a pretty fair price tag for him. If Young were to sit, 6,500 for Bogdanovic, I think, would be a fine play also. I think, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other residual, effects of Young missing. And then, of course, if Young plays, he's only 10K. He could absolutely crush that price tag. So keep in mind that if Young does play, I think he's a fantastic tournament play. I don't have that much interest in Bay. Capella, I guess, is somewhat interesting. He's just a little bit inconsistent, but if he gets that 30 minutes, he could easily, exceed 40 fantasy points.
Yeah, so if you just take Trae Young off the floor, the fantasy point per minute kind of gets spread out. But if you take Young and DeAndre Hunter off the floor, it's big bumps to a bunch of people. Bay gets a bump. Dejounte Murray gets a bump. Jalen Johnson will get a bump. But again, I don't expect Jalen Johnson to play a ton of minutes if he does play in this game. So, DeJounte would be a really good play. The thing that I'm kind of watching here is Vooch. If Vooch ends up sitting in this game, we're going to get a lot of people on the Chicago side playing Andre Drummond. And yes, I'm going to be one of those people playing Andre Drummond, right?
I will also. I've been waiting 2 years for Andre Drummond Day, so I'm getting a little antsy here.
But my point that I wanted to make was if Vooch sits, it's a huge upgrade to Clint Capella. I think Clint Capella would be very interesting in this game if we did get news that Vooch was going to sit. The other one, if you want to take some shots on Okongwu and hope that Capella gets in foul trouble or something, they're trying to make it work where both of these guys are playing together now. And that's not something that we've seen a lot this year, but we've seen Capella and Okongwu play on the floor together here recently, and it's just something worth noting. Do both of these guys get 30 minutes with Hunter out and Trae Young potentially out? So I think Okongwu would be someone in large field tournaments you could take some shots on here. Going to the Chicago side, Levine's still out, so I mean it's the big two. If
Let
you're
me
in
ask you
my
something.
eyes,
Let me ask you something real quick, Stevie. Before we go to the next team, how would you rank Claxton, Collins if Wemby was out, and Capella if Vucevic was out? How do you rank those three centers?
I think Claxton's number one for me, regardless.
Okay.
Collins' price increase stinks. So I think it would be for me. I think it'd be Claxton, Capella if Vooch is out, and then Collins. And like it's more of like Collins is someone that's gonna start and play like a good amount of minutes with Wemby off the floor, but he's still only gonna play like 28 to 30 minutes. Like they don't play this guy a ton of minutes, and
because they're all right that same exact price point.
Yeah, I mean the good thing about Zach Collins is he can add blocks, so like his upside is like 40 plus. But Claxton is in just one of the dream spots. We love centers against Detroit.
Yeah.
All right. I mean we don't have any real sample size with Vooch out, but we assume if Vooch does end up sitting, Drummond would start and play. I don't know. Like, do we think if Vooch sits, Drummond plays 30 minutes? It's so hard to guess, but I assume he'd play at least 25 minutes in this game.
Yeah.
If Drummond is somebody that is sometimes playable at 20 minutes. But
right.
I think it's not one of those spots you overthink. If Vooch is out, I think you play Drummond.
That's absolutely correct. Like even if you think he's going to play, like say, like anywhere between like 26 to 28, like he's 100% going to be in like 3 out of my 3 lineups. Like no question about it. It's really what do I do with my other center spot at util on DK? You know, like that's going to be the harder decision. But yeah, Drummond would be a plug and play in all formats. No reason to overthink that.
Now, if Vooch ends up sitting, with Levine and Craig already out, do not sleep on Kobe White and DeMar DeRozan. Like I know a lot of us will just kind of be like, all right, we're playing Drummond, but like with Vooch off the floor this season and taking out Levine, like DeRozan's 1.35 fantasy points per minute. His rebounding goes up. His assist rate has been really solid here recently. So don't sleep on DeRozan at 8,200, especially in a matchup against Atlanta. Like, don't overthink this matchup either. I mean, Atlanta is a team that plays really fast. They're really bad defensively. Chicago plays at the slowest pace in the NBA. So they're playing against the fifth fastest paced team that plays 27th in defensive rating. So really like the Chicago side of this game, regardless of who's in, who's out. It's just who am I playing based off of injury news here for Chicago.
If I knew that Young was going to guard White, I would fire up a ton of White. If Murray guards White, then it's a different story. But if I knew that Young was going to match up against Kobe White, I would fire up a ton of Kobe White in this spot.
I mean, so the opposite thought is like if that happens and Trae Young ends up missing, maybe we take some shots on Caruso. With DeJounte on
5,400, I don't know. That makes me a little nervous, but plus he's gonna go to the locker room at some point during his rotation. So.
I mean, you hope not.
Right.
Memphis at New Orleans, 229 total in this game. New Orleans a 4.5 point favorite. Memphis still dealing with a ton of injuries. Adams, Clark, Kennard, Rose out. Marcus Smart questionable. New Orleans side, Nance is doubtful. Ryan's out. Zeller's questionable. We'll start here with Memphis. Any interest here in the Grizzlies?
I think JJJ is kind of a little bit too cheap at 7,400. This is obviously not like the best matchup, but I think that price tag, there's plenty of meat on the bone, as Will likes to say, at that price point. So I think Williams at 5,100 would maybe be an intriguing value play. I don't know. I think that I obviously would like to play John Morant at 9,800. This guy should always be 10K or higher. We're not quite sure what the status of Marcus Smart's going to be. He's actually now questionable, so he may possibly play in this game. But this is not a great matchup. So I don't have a ton of interest in this game, assuming we don't get any big news.
Yeah, so for me on the Memphis side of things, as much as I like Triple J, this is just it's Bane and Morant's show right now.
Yeah.
If we look at like shot attempts and stuff since Ja's been back, and like Ja came back in the New Orleans game and like he took the game over, but like since that game, Desmond Bane 26 and 25 shots. They're relearning how to play with each other again on the floor together. So I think this is a spot. The sneaky thing here is New Orleans is really bad at defending the three. They're one of the worst teams in the NBA at defending the three. So I think this is a really good spot for Desmond Bane, like point props and like 3-point props. Outside of that, I mean, I just don't think you can play anybody besides Ja and Desmond Bane on this team. Like even if Marcus Smart comes back, it just kind of hurts. Like I don't know how much like Marcus Smart even plays if he comes back, because like this is just a different look Memphis team since Marcus Smart has been out with Ja back. So I think
Let's assume that we don't get Andre Drummond Day. Do you think Biyombo gets more minutes in this matchup, or do you think they go small?
I don't know if I'd play Biyombo. I don't know if I've played Biyombo much this season anyway. But I don't know if I'd trust his minutes.
I certainly wouldn't trust them. I'm just thinking for like large field GPPs. I think this would be a pretty decent spot against Joval, but I don't know if
minutes wise,
or not.
They should need him to play whatever Valanciunas plays.
Right.
But Valanciunas plays anywhere from 25 to 35 minutes.
Yeah, you can't trust either one of these centers' minutes, so it's a very, very high, volatile spot there.
Yeah, just don't. Again, one last time, don't sleep on Desmond Bane like 3-point prop or point prop here. This is a good spot. All right, New Orleans side, Zion, like his minutes have kind of been all over the place, and then the other night against Houston, he ended up playing 34 minutes. It was really good to see him back in that like 35-minute role. His price had gotten over 8K because he had been playing really well. He's back down in like right at 7,700. I don't hate Zion in this spot. Outside of that, I mean, we don't really see ceiling spots from McCollum or Ingram very often. I don't hate this spot for Ingram, but I think this is a spot we could take some shots on Zion.
Yeah, definitely at that price point, 7,700. I really feel like you could take shots in large field on any of Ingram, Williamson, McCollum, and Joval, just to like, as one-offs, as part of like, a 20 max type build. Just because I think that they all have reasonable ceilings at these prices. I do agree with you that Zion would be my favorite out of those four. The peripheral pieces of the Pelicans, personally, I don't have much interest in any of these guys like Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Najee. Any of these guys, I really don't. I'm not going to be getting to.
All right, moving on here. We got Indiana at Houston, 237.5 total here. Houston, 3.5-point favorite. Bruce Brown, who was questionable, just got ruled out for this game. And then Bullock and Eason are questionable on the Houston side. We'll start with the Pacer side. Bruce Brown is a 25 to 30-minute guy. So some useful minutes here for Indiana. It's just figuring out where they're going to go. I assume they're going to go Nembhard. He played 36 minutes with Brown out the other night against my Magic. He's $5K. I think that's a fair price tag, but I mean, like, again, like this is another spot where it's like, I mean, Houston's a good defensive team. Houston plays slow, Indiana plays really fast. Like, what type of game are we going to get here from the Pacers?
Yeah, I've never seen a team that's like completely reversed the way that they play their styles. Like last year, Houston was super fast and absolutely atrocious defensively, and now they're the second best defensive team in all basketball, and they play at an incredibly slow pace. So I do agree with you that Nemhard would probably draw the start for Brown at 5K. I think he's at least a little bit interesting. I don't have a whole lot of interest in this Indiana team as much as I love playing Pacer games, but this matchup is pretty brutal. So for them, Halliburton at 10-4. I think he's okay, especially if he's going to hang around that like 1 to 2% owned zone. But I honestly, in a 3 max, I'm probably not going to be playing any Pacers.
Yeah, again, I wish Nemhard was a little bit cheaper, but his minutes are going to be really solid. I mean,
Yeah.
I hate the matchup for him in this spot. I mean, Bruce Brown being off doesn't really affect too much here outside of like Nemhard getting minutes. Bruce Brown, I mean, he's a guy that gets up like 8 to 12 shots a game, so maybe a few extra shots for like Buddy Hield. Maybe a few extra shots for Halliburton here, but not like if you take Bruce Brown off on court IQ, you're not seeing like a huge increase for anybody. On the Houston side, I mean, one of the best matchups in the NBA is going up against the Pacers. I think Jabari Smith is underpriced for this matchup. Sengun and like Van Vliet are priced really close to where they should be, but like Jabari Smith has been playing big minutes here recently, and if he's going to get big minutes against the Pacers, he's going to smash tonight.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Jabari Smith is going to be right now we have him at like 10%. I just don't think he's going to get steamed up that much higher. I hope he doesn't. I really like that call, Stevie, on Jabari Smith. I really like Sengun also in this matchup, especially if he's going to come in at pretty low ownership, which we currently have him at, like 3%. Even if he gets steamed to like 7 or 8, I absolutely love him. So it's one of those two big guys. Center's already a pretty strong position, so it's probably going to be Smith for me. And I think this is an amazing spot for Van Vliet also. So it's really, I wouldn't mind getting to 1 or 2 of these Rockets. It's only a 3.5 point spread, so this game should stay fairly close, 237 total. I definitely want to attack this Indiana defense.
I'm going to tell you all right now, sports books and even on Prize Picks, Jabari Smith is at 26.5 points and rebounds for this game. He is criminally underpriced on the sports books. I just grabbed this prop. So I'll give out a different one for the morning grind game, but I think Jabari Smith is just criminally underpriced on books for like how his role has just been increasing here recently. And like maybe if Eason and these guys end up playing, but I mean, like if Eason sits again, Jabari Smith is way underpriced at 26.5. And like if Eason plays, does he play his full minutes? Like I mean, like I said, I just grabbed this Jabari Smith over 26.5 points and rebounds. All right. That was it for FanDuel slate. They ended at the 8 o'clock games. DraftKings included the 10 o'clock games. We got Sacramento at Portland, 236.5 total here. Sacramento, an 8-point favorite. Lynn and Monk questionable for Sacramento. Ayton questionable. Williams out for Portland. Let's start here with Sacramento. Shame on FanDuel for leaving this game off the slate because this is a really solid basketball game. What do you like here for the Kings?
Definitely. I mean, that Monk news is kind of important. Definitely would prop up guys like Kevin Huerter. I think Herter's interesting anyway, even at 5,200. I don't know if I can get to Sabonis, even though I think this is a really good matchup, but there's already so many other centers that I'd kind of rather play at, lower prices. De'Aaron Fox, I think, is fine at 9,500. Keegan Murray, I think he might be a little bit pricey for this matchup. There's really, I thought that I would like more from this game, but the way that they have Sabonis and Fox kind of priced relative to the other games, and then there's another game left on this slate that we still haven't talked about. So it's not my favorite, but I certainly would not fault anybody if they wanted to get to Sabonis, and I don't think he's going to be very highly owned.
One other thing, if Monk sits, like we saw a random 27-minute game from Trey Lyles the other night. DraftKings is really tough to play. No, I was just gonna say it's really tough to play Trey Lyles on DraftKings because he's center only.
Right. That's exactly what I was gonna say. I can't imagine taking up a center spot on Trey Lyles.
So here's the thing, right, Tim? Like if say we're going to talk about Zubac in this next game because he draws one of the best matchups in the league. We're going to talk about him. Like maybe you're on Zubac and you're on somebody else from the Clippers or you're on somebody else from this game and you have like 2 spots left and you didn't get like some ceiling spots out of the 8:00 hour. I think that's where Trey Lyles becomes interesting as like a swap option. Like on DraftKings, but I don't know. Like I'm not seeking out to play him at center on this slate because there's so many good center plays that we've already talked about, but we're going to talk about Zubac, and I think that Zubac's really interesting just overall in that game. So I think if you're behind in the 8:00 window and the 7:00 window, like that's where it would be interesting to play some Trey Lyles. But like Kevin Huerter, his minutes are all over the place. It's really tough. I think like if you're playing the Kings, you're hoping for like a Fox or a Sabonis ceiling spot, or Keegan Murray is still under 7K and he's shown 40+ point upside. So I don't necessarily hate Keegan Murray in a matchup against Portland where I wouldn't say like Portland stinks as bad as some of those other teams defensively, but like neither one of these teams are great defensively. So I could see this game staying competitive. On the Portland side, like Simons is going to flash upside from time to time. So like he's always somebody that you're looking at in large field tournaments. We saw Brogdon have a big game the other night. Grant, he's just not a high usage guy. I think the thing here is kind of seeing like, does Ayton play or not? He's been dealing with this knee for, I feel like, the last month or so where he's missed some time. What do you like here for Portland?
It would really just be Simons. I'm just not crazy about that ownership right now. He's currently projected for 20%, 8,100 point guard, shooting guard. I think he definitely is like the quote safest play out of Portland. I think if I was going to take a shot on a lower owned guy, it would be Grant or Ayton. Ayton is again another one of these centers that's priced in the high 6s. I can't imagine not all these guys can get ownership, right? We've already talked about 3 or 4 great center plays in the high 6s on DK. So if you want to bypass guys like Claxton and Capella and possibly Collins, like Ayton is a great, late night hammer contrarian play. I don't think he's going to be 17% owned like we have in initial runs. So I think he would make for a fantastic GPP play. Like I said, I think Grant is interesting, even though he doesn't project particularly well. But we know that he has got the ability to flash a pretty big ceiling, especially at 7,300.
All right. Let's talk about Charlotte at LA. Last game on the slate, 229.5 total here. The Clippers, a 12-point favorite. Ball, Ntilikina, Williams remain out. Miller questionable for Charlotte. And then on the Clippers side, Plumlee remains out. Kawhi is questionable. This seems like a very, very good spot for them to rest Kawhi. So I think he is on the very questionable side of questionable. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll talk about that in just a second. We'll start here with Charlotte. If Miller doesn't play, his minutes are worth noting, and like Williams being out really hasn't changed much because like he's been out, and Nick Richards is now priced up to 6K. what do we like, if anything, here for Charlotte?
I don't really like a whole heck of a lot. I've been playing Terry Rozier at ridiculous, super, super low ownership. He put up 50 last game. I don't really love this matchup for Charlotte, so I'm probably not going to pay 8,500 for Rozier. Miller being out, I don't know. I don't really want to pay 6,700 for Hayward or 6,500 for PJ Washington. I'm definitely not going to pay 8K for Miles Bridges. So, I mean, we're really kind of running out of guys that are even viable. So, to me, I think Charlotte's more of a stay away, in my opinion.
On DraftKings, again, if you're playing this catch up role and you didn't get the ceiling out of the 8 o'clock hour, and you're playing James Harden or Paul George on the other side of this game, I think that's where you'd get exposure to Rozier. I think Rozier, he's either going to have a 30-point game or 50 plus. If this game stays close. If this game stays close, Rozier's probably playing really well, or Bridges is playing really well. PJ Washington is someone that he randomly comes out and takes a ton of shots. So I think PJ Washington in large field tournaments is in play regardless here. Especially if Brandon Miller were to sit in this game. When Brandon Miller went out the other night, PJ Washington he logged a lot of second half minutes. So he's on this second unit, and sometimes on the second unit, PJ Washington just chucks. So of all people, PJ Washington is the usage guy on the second unit of this team. So I think at 6,500, you could take some shots on him in tournaments. He's gone over 30 fantasy points in 3 of the last 5. He does have that 40-point upside when he's shooting really well. On the Clippers side, again, I think Kawhi's on the questionable side of questionable. That makes any sense. But James Harden has been playing fantastic. This is a guy that has just kind of taken on this Clippers role, and he's been playing great. Paul George, 8,700, a little bit cheaper than Harden, but if Kawhi sits, I have interest in Harden, George, and Zubac. I have interest in Zubac regardless because Charlotte's one of the worst teams.
I really like
centers.
Zubac. Yeah, I really like Zubac. Again, another center in the 6K range, but I think I would. I mean, so we're talking about Claxton, Capella, possibly Collins, possibly Ayton, and now we get to Zubac, who is the cheapest out of that group, and I think probably in the best spot. And he might come in at the lowest ownership because this is the late night game, so people might not want to wait around for this late night hammer. I think possibly he's my favorite, other than probably Claxton.
Yeah, it's a really good spot for him. Charlotte's been a bottom 5 rebounding team for the last 3 seasons, so. This is a high rebound spot for Zubac, and my biggest concern with him is games staying close. Clippers game, this is a game the Clippers should win. It's just if they're crushing here, he plays 25 minutes. If this game's close, he plays 30 minutes, and we want the 30-minute side. But I think that regardless, he has upside here. He's going to get high opportunity shots in this offense on a nightly basis. So. It's just a good spot, especially if Kawhi sits. It's a really good spot if Kawhi sits.
If Kawhi sits, can you play Westbrook?
I don't know if I think I'd take shots on Man or Powell before I'd take shots on Westbrook.
Yeah. He's just so cheap now. 6,200 just looks so appealing with no.
They're playing so well without him.
No, I know.
So the other night, Kawhi ended up sitting. Coffee Man, Zubac, Harden, and George started in that game, and Boston just absolutely crushed the Clippers in that game. So looking at the first half when the game was super competitive, Westbrook in that first half, he had 5 minutes in the first quarter, and then he played it looked so on Court IQ he played 11 first half minutes in a close game. So that was without Kawhi. Very competitive first half. He played 11 minutes. So I just don't see him playing more than like 22 minutes. They closed with Norman Powell in both the first and second quarters, and like Norman Powell ended up playing almost 15 minutes in the first half of that close game. So like his run wasn't garbage time run. They were using Norman Powell to close a lot already in close games. So I think like I would take shots on Norman Powell before I take shots on Westbrook. And like you get a value, right? Like you get $600. But we know that like Westbrook, when he's on the floor, he's going to have his usage is going to be high. But like he scored 22 of his 27 fantasy points in blowout run the other night against Boston Celtics. So I don't trust Russell Westbrook's role right now. The Clippers they're playing well without him. So that's why I wasn't on him here.
Yeah.
All right, let's play the morning grind game, and then we'll get out of here. We're playing the morning grind game in the morning. What kind of game is this? All right. Favorite play under 5K to go 7X. We got a few options today. Who do you like?
Under 5K to go 7X. Definitely want to go somebody. I lost my DK. I got logged out of my DK account. So you go first, Stevie.
I mean, I'll take Drummond.
Oh,
I don't know if Fuchs is gonna play or not, but I'll take Drummond because I'll cheat. I think that's fine.
You'll cheat. I will go. I'm still loading here.
The wheels are turning in Tim's head.
I know. I'm so mad right now. Everything was fine, and then DK just booted me.
It's not. Is it worse than FanDuel? Switch.
Well, no. At least DK knows what state I'm in. So,
so true.
Yeah. So, I'm gonna go under 5K.
Yep.
Yeah, you did cheat.
I mean, it was right for the taking. I could easily get crushed though if Vooch plays.
I'll go Trey Man.
All right. Over 8K to go under 5X. Who's your bust today?
Anthony Edwards.
Wrong call. No, I'm just kidding. He might score. He might score 40 actual points and still not get there. So
right.
I hear you. Man, it's just tough with like the Kawhi news. Kawhi matters so much here, but I'm gonna go Terry Rozier. Really tough spot against the Clippers. Favorite 6X play on the slate?
I'll go Claxton.
Yeah, I like Claxton a lot today. I'm going to go Jabari Smith for Houston. Love the spot for him today. I think this is a fantastic spot. Really hope Easton sits, but even if Easton doesn't play, I have a ton of interest in Jabari Smith. Let's get weird GPP play of the day. Very rare that we have like projected ownership up for the show, so we can actually see who's potentially a let's get weird GPP play. Who do you got today?
Yeah, I want to look to see what he's actually projected to be owned. Okay, I'm going to go Wendell Carter.
Oh, okay. Wendell Carter Jr. I like that. I'm going to go Desmond Bane. This is a really good 3-point spot for him. And I don't know, like right now we currently have him projected for 6% ownership. So really like Desmond Bane today. Any bets or player props or anything standing out to you here?
Yeah, so I was looking. I'm gonna take the Zubac over 22.5 points rebounds.
Yep, like that as well. I already bet that. So right there with you. So I'm gonna go Claxton over 21.5 points and rebounds. That's what I got here. Throw together. I mean, I gave out Jabari Smith, and you can kind of piece together a Prize Picks card here if you are on Prize Picks on some of the stuff that we talked about, or if you're on sports books, you can just
DK has Claxton at 20.5.
Oh, nice. I think I got him on Hard Rock at 20.5. Yep. So
Yeah.
Prize Picks
Perfect.
Claxton is 21.5, and that's what I was looking at. So more than 21.5 on Claxton on Prize Picks, but on Hard Rock, I got him at 20.5 minus 130. Tim, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on, man. Yeah, Tim volunteered to do the early morning grind today, the day after Christmas. So appreciate that. We'll be back tomorrow for real on Wednesday. On YouTube, we'll be back later tonight. So thank you all for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe to the RotoGrinders Morning Grind YouTube page. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a good one. We'll see you then.